Hello, everyone, and welcome back to PAO Fans International. The American crew is back again. Today it is me and Alex. Alex, how are you, man?
I'm good, Antoni. Um, you know, under this, given the circumstances, just fine. Life is good other than Panathinaikos, I guess, right now.
Thank God for that, man. And yeah, it wasn't the best weekend for Panathinaikos. It was kind of the last 4 or 5 days have been up and down for this football club. We're gonna kind of get just we'll just get right into it. I think you guys. Panathinaikos. Vikingur was our first match. We played last Thursday here in the US. It was Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon here in the US for that game. Thursday evening in Greece, Panathinaikos was able to turn around the deficit and beat Vikingur. I believe it was 3-2 on aggregate. We won 2-0 in Oaxaca and Athens. Um, Overall, I relief. Relief is my first emotion, my first thought when it came to that game. I wasn't very happy with the performance overall. I was happy that, of course, that we got the progression onto the next round. But it was a tough watch. My hope, and I think everybody's hope watching the game was that Panathinaikos was going to come out, first 10 minutes right out the gate, get a goal, take command of the game. But we saw what we expected from Vikinger, and that was them kind of creating this shell. And they were a tough nut to crack. I think we made it a lot harder on ourselves than we needed to at times, though. That especially that first half, lots of just mistakes, heads dropping, silly things here and there that we saw on the defensive end as well as from the goalkeeper, in my opinion. Um, Ultimately, we came out with the win with a goal from Juricic and a goal from Tete. Again, when the full time whistle blew, I was just like, thank God, man, that we're past this. We beat Vikinger and we're on to the next round. Um, Alex, when you were watching the game, what was kind of going through your head watching those players on the pitch?
I agree with basically everything that you said. Like, obviously, first and foremost, the result was the most important. We had talked after the first match that that might have been one of the worst games in our history. Losing 2-1, it doesn't seem that bad, but given the opponent, given the circumstances, given all that, we basically likened it to Kabbalah, the failure of Kabbalah, which again, whether you want to debate which one is worse, which one's better, Kabbalah, we didn't lose actually either game, and we ended up going out on away goals, this and that. This one we actually lost the first leg against a team that had never played a European knockout uh, game, and they played their first European knockout game and they won it. And we went into their history for all the wrong reasons, right? We are forever in the history of Vikingur and forever in the history of Icelandic football, club football, because no Icelandic team had won a knockout stage game. So anyway, that's all the negatives that were done in the first game and why it was so bad. And we needed to just get through anyway to save face and not have it be over two legs, one of the worst two-legged results in our history. And we got it done. We got the result, which is kind of the most important thing. But I agree with what you said also that it wasn't the prettiest performance. I think there were a lot of negatives. I think a better team would have um would have not allowed us to to come back. And I'm thinking all about a couple scenarios. Most notably, there was a 5 minute period. I think it was between the 20th and 25th minute where they had an open net twice on us. We were very sloppy in the back, and they probably should have scored realistically both those occurrences, or at the bare minimum one. Fortunately, they scored none, and that's what I mean by a better team would have put us away. A better team would have, put those specific chances that I'm bringing up away, both of them or at least one of them. And we're talking about a very different game because then it's, 1-0 to them in the 25th minute. And that's a bigger mountain for us to climb right there. So happy with the result, not thrilled with the performance, which I think leads into obviously the next game that we're going to talk about, Lamia, because it's not isolated. Um, I don't know. It's kind of hard to talk about the Thursday game given what happened yesterday. because even though Thursday was a success, basically, like I said, I think the problems bleed into the next game, and it's hard to kind of isolatedly talk about them.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't isolate the performances from both games. The clear issue is just like the struggle to score, the struggle to find a goal. I believe I was seeing something with Alki, and I saw some stat. And out of like the top 4 or 5 clubs in Greece, like we scored the lowest amount of goals out of them. Like we have like it was like 68 big chances created or something like that, and we have 28 goals. PAOK has like 47 scored goals. So it's like we have basically they have basically double the amount of goals that we have in the same amount of chances taken. And it's just been a common theme and something that I brought up at the beginning of the season, and what was my hope was like, okay, law of averages. We're struggling to score now, but by January time, the goals are gonna start coming, you guys. I was completely wrong. Like we're looking these past couple games like we did under Alonso. I mean, we're struggling to score. Yeah, we're a little more stable in midfield in a sense. We have more structure in a sense in our play, but we can't score. Like we're too predictable at one point. We were watching the Vikingur game, and I mean, they're just walking around. They're just like statues. And Vikinger is packing the box, and we're doing the same thing. We're in the spot. We're not moving around. We're not trying to disjoint the defense. Nothing. It was just standing around and just falling and flopping, which is what that frustrated me a little bit as well. And I mentioned it. The fishing for penalties, in my opinion, it's pathetic. I'm not happy with trying to find a penalty. I mean, we were flopping in the box 4 or 5 times in the first half alone. And to me, that just suggests I don't even think the team believes that they can score goals. Like, if you're cheaply falling that easily and hoping for a whistle, that shows that you don't have confidence in your ability as a team to score goals. And it leached over into the Lamia game. Yeah, they weren't flopping as much, nearly as much in the Lamia game as they did with Vikinger, but the struggle to score was there. And you start to look at things like I brought it up last time with Foti. I mean, at this point, as the lead striker, the goals have to start coming. You have to start making it happen. And we can argue about not having service, et cetera, et cetera. But for me, Swiderski came in the Lamia game. Or I'm sorry, in the Vikinger game, and he immediately impacted the game. He got an assist. He came in and changed the game in 10 minutes. Forti's been playing consistently, consistent minutes. And it's like I don't see him making an impact on the game. If it's not a penalty, look, fair play. It's tough to score a penalty, but it's not a penalty. There's really nothing there. It's just this sounds bad, but it's kind of like we're lacking at a spot at the striker spot when Forti's playing. That's how it's been this season for the most part, in my opinion. And I think that's part of the struggles. The whole team as a whole. I mean, I can go on and on and on. I mean, Drago is another player, Dragowski, who ever since that game in Ceres where he got the red, it's like he's just been in his own head. And he's been struggling. He's been making poor passes. He's been making mistakes. He was at fault for that second goal that Lamia scored yesterday. Um, Defensively, I mean, we've had kind of a makeshift defense with Maximovic playing at center back in the Vikinger game, like playing Fikai, like so many different issues. But for me, guys like Drago and guys like Yuri making mistakes on the goalkeeper end have been catastrophic, but also our lack of ability to score. We don't have a consistent scorer up top. It's supposed to be Foti, and he hasn't been able to string positive games together. I'm sorry. I just feel like I've kind of gone all over the place, but it's just like all these ideas just culminating and just what I saw the last 2 games. It's just been frustrating.
No, that's how it is. It is all over the place, literally right now, because currently we are struggling on defense and on offense. Um, you know, to concede, now we're jumping around, but to concede 3 goals to Lamia, who had scored 10 goals the whole season coming into the game. I mean, that just tells you. kind of where the team's at. And only to score one goal against them also kind of tells you, kind of reinforces the point that we're struggling on both fronts. This was something that you said actually, which I haven't seen anybody say, but ever since Yedvay went down is really when our defensive problems started happening. Because if you recall, we've talked a lot about how, as of the turn of the year, January, kind of the second half of the season, we had the best defense in the league. And we were all kind of surprised about it because we didn't feel like we were doing anything above and beyond. Yet statistically, we had conceded the least amount of goals. So we've been talking about that. And even though that was true, that changed coincidentally sometime around or exactly around when Yedvay went down, and we haven't had him since. His work in the back line was completely underappreciated. Obviously, it was appreciated last season, which is why he got signed on a permanent because if you remember, he was on loan. So he was appreciated enough last season to get the permanent, but I feel like this year we didn't really appreciate how much he was bringing until he went down because that's when statistically our defense started getting worse, and we went from having the least amount of goals conceded to, I don't know where we are right now, but we are definitely not top three, I would assume, off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Um, so that's credit to you, Antoni, because you pointed out that correlation with Yadvai going down.
Yeah, yeah. I actually, yeah, that just like corresponding it, yeah, because we went on that run. Rui came in, we went on this undefeated run, and the stat that stood off the page was that we had the number one defense in the Greek Super League. Yedvay gets injured, suddenly we start to struggle, then we lose a game, then we lose another game, then we start struggling, and it's one of those things where the unfortunate thing is on the defensive end. We've had these injuries. Palmer Brown came in, he kind of filled in the spot a little bit, but then he got injured as well. Um, Yuri and Drago haven't been themselves the past month or so, and it's been a struggle as well. So the back line's seen new players come in and out, getting injured. We've been kind of shuffling the deck a little bit, so that's kind of just thrown us in for a loop. And you mentioned the Lamia, right? Lamia scoring what 10 goals. They copped 7 goals last week. We couldn't score more than one goal against them. I mean, offensively, like we've seen at full strength, we've seen what this team can be defensively. But the consistent issue this season for me has just been the offense. Like we have never fully taken off. Like we were winning games, but it was like a 1-0 game, maybe a 2-1 scraping by, maybe a 2-0 was like the most we'd score. Um, and that included penalties. We've never taken off. We've seen Tete. Tete's been getting criticism. He turns it up in Europe, it seems like, and then in the Greek league, he seems to struggle. I was kind of just making the observation. I think others have made this observation as well. When Vayanidis is on the pitch, I think he opens up a lot more. And once he came on, that's why he was able to score the goal against Vikingur. Because when Kotsirasu was on, the opposing defenses they just double Tete because they know that Kotsiras isn't really going to make the same type of runs that Vayanidis runs. Vayanidis came on and I saw that there were some criticisms against him. I didn't think he was too bad. He came on and for a second I forgot that he was on there and I'm like, oh, I was like, is Pellistri back? I mean, he was just running up that right side and just getting past the opposing defenses and causing some issues there and that later on opened up Tete. He made that one overhead pass towards Swiderski, which Swiderski was barely able to get to, and I wish that he had tried some more, but it allowed him to get more creative. It allowed him to open up the game more. But in the Greek league, when he's not there, um, when Vayanidis isn't in or he's injured or suspended or whatever, we tend to see that they get kind of shut out against these types of opponents that sit back a lot, and we see that a lot in the Greek league, right? Defensive-minded league. Pellistri, unfortunately, he's been injured the past month. And then again, we just got Swiderski, but Foti, as the kind of like hands down starting striker, it just hasn't been delivering for me. And it's not, me trying to pick on him or anything. It's just I see what I see. And if he's supposed to be like the face of the team, he's supposed to be the leader of the team, he's the captain. We need to start seeing some captain like performances at that number 9 spot, or else it's like we got to bench him and play Swiderski, in my opinion.
Yeah, you said a lot of good stuff. just to go back to the Jedvaj thing, because I was just curious about it. Jedvaj's first missed game was the Panathinaikos 2-2 draw, and he's been out since then. That was his first missed game, which, we've talked a lot about how I think we've all pinpointed that Panathinaikos game being a turning point in when things started going awry. Obviously, not just the drop points in that game, but also the results afterwards, the performances afterwards, and the goals conceded afterwards. Because in the league, since that Panathinaikos game, and this is just league, okay, that was match week 18. We just finished match week 24. So that's 7 match weeks. We've only kept one clean sheet in those seven league. Again, that's only league. But I think that gives you an idea because the previous 4 games before he got injured, we kept 3 out of 4 clean sheets, and the only one that we didn't keep was against PAOK. I think that gives you a really good idea of what changed, what happened in that match week 18 with Panathinaikos, the before and after kind of thing, and kind of again to your point, Adonis with Jedvaj, how big of a loss he's been, because we have not been the same team since then, it's defensively and in general.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Jedvaj, as you pointed out those stats, right? It was the Sedes game where yeah, he missed, and that's where it just started to unravel after Sedes. And then even Arau, like we haven't been seeing Arau the last couple of games. I feel like Arau, although he can kind of mess up some of the offensive momentum going forward, I think he provides us a little bit of stability, especially as kind of like a cover with Jedvaj. If we remember last year, he was the center back partner to Jedvaj, and we had some pretty decent defense. And just having Arau absent as well with Jedvaj, I think has just kind of disjointed us there. And
Yeah,
yeah, it's been tough to watch, man. It's been tough. It's that, and then it's just the mentality of the team is just in the gutter. Like you just watch the heads drop. You watch the elementary mistakes. There was a point in the Vikingur game where um I believe it was Ingeson. The cameras picked up or the audio picked up on him, and he's telling he's like, guys, what are you doing? Come on, like it's a 5 foot pass right in front, and we're kicking it out of bounds or we're giving it away, and two, like you mentioned, two open nets. Kotsiras and I think Maximovic had to clear it to save Drago. Um, and it's like these elementary mistakes. So it's like a whole culmination of like these like the team's mentality. I don't know where it's at. Our defense is just in shambles because we have no stability back there. Like every week, one week it's Maximovic, or one game it's Maximovic, then it's Bart back there. We had Palmer Brown, then he got injured. Then we had 19-year-old Fikai back there. Vayanidis finally came back. He was injured for a while. Mladenovic has been holding down that left side for basically the whole season while Max has been injured. It's like, what do you work with back there? Like everything is just
yeah,
kind of makeshift. It's fallen apart. And you know, I feel like we've had a lot of like I noticed the talks I feel like have been like on the midfield. Um, but personally, it can be better. The midfield can be better, but I feel like that hasn't really been our issue. I feel like it's the two extremes. The defense has fallen off a cliff, and the offense has just not been here at all season. And the
I
midfield,
agree.
yeah, the midfield's just been mid. Like it's just kind of
Yeah.
like it
The
could be
midfield's
better.
been fine. There's
Yeah,
definitely problems in the midfield. I'm not excusing any of them. And this kind of transitions nicely to something I want to show you. But for me, it's also the extremes too. And we focused a lot on the defense. The offense too is just, we've said, the general statement is like we struggle to score goals. This has been, unfortunately, this has been a theme for a long time. Even when Rui came, I think I was probably the most adamant about this. I was talking a lot about how we were creating a lot of chances and we weren't scoring. You kind of alluded to that earlier in the podcast today. And that was a kind of a big problem in the beginning. We were getting by though, because we were getting the results and we were winning a lot of games by a small margin or a small score line. So it wasn't really, I was kind of nervous that it was because it was just kind of a pattern. So that's why I was nervous. And then I kind of shut up about it because it was around the turn of the year we had kind of solved that, right? Like we were looking better, we were scoring more, and we were converting chances easier. And now we're back there because if you look at kind of where we're at, in each of these games, we've had about 20, 25 chances. I think against Vikingur, we were just shy of 20. Against Lamia, we had over 20, I think. So again, we're creating a lot of chances, but we're not scoring a lot. And you'll say that we scored two against Vikingur. That's true, but it also took us almost 75 minutes to get to that point. Again, this is a team that I highlighted in January in 4 games conceded what? I think 15 goals in January over 4 games, which is about 3.75 average per game. So yeah, you could say you scored 2 goals against them, but they're not a team that uh breeds confidence defensively given what just what the statistics show. Yet we only were able to score 2 goals from open play against them over 180 minutes. I'm not including the penalty, obviously. So yeah, it's not as simple as, oh, we scored 2 goals against them. That's good. I mean, yeah, it's good. I'm not saying it's not, but that's the best you got in a way. And I don't want to have too high of a bar, but that's the realistically how I feel. Anyway, that was a rant. What I really wanted to point out is for me why I don't put so much problems on the midfield. I agree with you with the defense and the attack is because often I see, we still are playing very heavily on the wings, which has kind of been a theme since I think the Jova days. And despite changing many coaches over those 2 years or so, we still have kind of kept that wing heavy play in our DNA. Maybe not consistently game to game, but as a general outlook, I think we have kept that heavy wing play in our game. And it's a lot of crossing, it's a lot of getting to the side of the box and trying to find the man in the middle. And what I saw on Thursday, despite finding 2 goals, it did take until the 75th minute, like I said, is that our guys just lacked creativity, right? And we've had this problem before against teams that played similar to Vikingur in the Greek league, lower level teams who are going to sit back, who are going to fill the box. What do you do? How do you break them down, right? Because it's gonna happen. We've seen it happen, and it's gonna happen again and again and again, primarily in the Greek league because that's where you're facing lower opponents. How do you break it down? And we just get stuck. We just get stuck, and our players just lack creativity at that point. And unfortunately, I think that's a drawback of being at this level. If your players were more creative, they'd probably be at a higher level. That's just the reality of it. But still, you have to find ways around it because you can't use this as the excuse. There were games against Olympiacos too where we mustered 0 shots on target. So that's the inverse. It's not just against the lowly opponents; it's also against a higher opponent. Um, what I wanted to point out, I'm going to share my screen here for anyone who's watching with video. Can you see that, Adoni?
Yeah.
So often I feel like, let me get the pointer. Where is the pointer here? I can't find the pointer. Maybe I can. Uh,
Yeah, and while Alex is pulling out the pointer there for this
oh,
video for his presentation, um, yeah, it's the emphasis on the wings is actually a good point. I'm actually glad that Alex brought that up, um, because we saw that evolution from Jovanovic, it went to Tareem, um, we with Alonso. I mean, Alonso. I don't know what we were doing with Alonso, but um, we see it again with Rui as well. This sort of build up from the wing, that the heavy wing play, and I was just kind of thinking to myself, just kind of the discussions I've been seeing online with Panathinaikos fans, um, to where maybe switching it up a little bit. I know, again, I bring up our defensive woes, but maybe getting rid of the holding midfielder and replacing it with Bakasetas, especially since our current defensive setup isn't where it should be. Um, Alex, it looks like you got your pointer ready. Um,
I don't think I do, but it's all right.
no
I
worries.
wasn't able to figure it out. So what I'm talking about is that I find ourselves often in this position. I can't point to it, but we're often in a position where we have the ball on the side of the box. I think specifically this is more so on the left side, on Mladenovic's side and Juric's side. And they actually a lot of the times they're crossing the ball from outside the box. So right, let's say to the left of the box where you see that the classic crossing position, but often they're actually just inside the box. and they just run into a wall. I took some notes during the Vikingur game, and every couple of minutes I have failed cross from Juricic, failed cross from Mladenovic. And what I mean by failed cross, I don't mean they actually put the ball around the penalty spot. I mean they're hitting the first player that's in front of them. The cross is not even getting to the box, to where you in the middle of the box where you want to find your players.
Right.
I'm gonna pull up a situation from the Borac game. Our one goal against Borac was something that looked like this. And where Mladenovic is right here in this picture is kind of the area that I'm talking about. So many times we have him or Juricic or whoever is on that left side, primarily those two, just like that. He's crossing the ball, and there's the obviously the first defender in front of him, and he's just hitting it. Here, that this doesn't happen. He actually gets, this is what I'm trying to focus on, creativity. How do you get past these situations? Okay, this is not exactly like against Vikingur because the box is way more filled, but he's not just putting the ball right on the penalty spot where is kind of the last place in this situation where you want it. He's getting creative. This is the unmarked up version, but this is the marked up version. So you have our three players running in here, and the three defenders are running back towards the players. It creates this big open space here where that's the space you want to exploit rather than just filling the box around the penalty spot. Ultimately, these guys all make the run. Bakasetas is the one who gets the ball, and you see him with the armband there. And he basically goes to where Maximovic is. Maximovic is the one who's in front of him. Bakasetas' arrow is going through Maximovic. Bakasetas runs to where Maximovic is right now, and Maximovic continues his run. So Maximovic is drawing the attention of those three defenders, taking actually vacating space for the run that's behind him. So this is kind of the reason I think this is so good. And keep in mind, this was under Alonso, right? So this is when we weren't playing pretty ball. We are also struggling to score goals. Yet I think we did something really good here in that we didn't just do the fill the box with crosses. This is a cross ultimately, but it's not the type of crosses which we see 90% of the time, which is just 40 in between two guys, stagnant, not moving, and pray that he gets the head to the ball. And if he does, it might not have a lot of power on it because he's stagnant. These guys are making the run in. It's confusing the defenders. It's creating space that is ultimately is being exploited, and he's able to get power on the shot. So, like I said, I highlighted that Bakasetas ends up, when he receives the ball, he ends up about where Maximovic is right now. Right there, just a little more advanced. And look where Maximovic is. He's made the run. He's basically a nobody. He's the Foti kind of situation. That's where Foti should be. Foti's not on the pitch, it's Sporer. But that's where your center forward is. Sometimes you just drag the players along and you vacate the space and you let Bakasetas exploit that space behind you. This is the kind of creativity that I'm talking about. It's still a cross at the end of the day. It's still playing cross heavy, but it's doing something that I want to say is unorthodox, but it's not even really unorthodox. It's just getting creative, finding a different solution to kind of a routine problem.
Right. Yeah, and I think this is a wonderful breakdown here, Alex. It provides us that visual of what works and what doesn't. And funnily enough, yeah, you mentioned that Foti, wasn't on the pitch. Sporar, the striker, is right here, which is kind of odd. Um, and we see Baka, we see Maximovic, who all season, something that I like about Maximovic is that he makes these types of runs. He positions himself in these types of dangerous areas. Um, and we've gotten a couple goals from him because of this style of play. Um, I agree with the crossing in the box. I think is just too predictable. While watching the Vikinger, the second leg, um, I saw a lot of chatter about that. Vikinger knew what was going to happen. We'd sometimes, I don't know if you could see my annotations here with the marker, but we'd occupy space here on the left side of the pitch of the box right here, or we'd occupy space outside, and Vikinger was just completely packing this inside of the box. And every single time, our player would either lay it off this way for a cross and just hope that it was gonna land with 6'2" Foti for the header, who was double or triple marked at times, or we were just going to turn it back around and blast it out of the stadium for a long shot attempt. And they figured this out. And it's one of those things where this Vikinger, again, is an Icelandic team from the Icelandic Football League. They got their first ever knockout win against us, and they figured us out. They figured us out in that first leg. They figured us out in that second leg, but we ultimately, if we're being honest, that first goal by Juricic was just lucky. That was just he just
Mladenovic, right?
or sorry, yeah, Mladenovic. Yeah, Juricic took the ball, shot it and fell and lost it, and then I think it was Swiderski bounced the ball off his back to Mladenovic, and he just shot it, and it just kind of curled in, and that was just a lucky shot. That was there was nothing besides Swiderski in that to where we changed up the game plan. It was just same old predictable Panathinaikos, and he scored that. And then with the second goal, I think that was the one where Juricic took the shot, and then he fell over, and then or it deflected, and then Tete just went and just placed it in the top corner. So it's too predictable on the offensive end. There's no structure on the defensive end because we're makeshift right now. And it's just turned into a disaster. I mean, we've unraveled what in the matter of 1 month, everything's just unraveled. It we went from playing pretty solid bala. I mean, we were all talking about how it's so nice to have a system again to just like us being predictable and not able to score against Lamia and struggling to score against Vikingur.
Yeah. Um,
Ridiculous.
Wanted to say something about what you said. I forgot now, but I agree. And it's just okay. Let me backtrack a second because my head's all over the place. Sometimes you need a moment of magic, right? Sometimes you need a moment of magic, and sometimes you need what Mladenovic pulled out of his pocket, whether it was lucky or not. Sometimes you just need that. My problem is that you shouldn't be relying on that and hoping for that against an opponent like Vikingur. That's kind of where I have to draw the line.
Yeah.
Because you shouldn't struggle so much for 75 minutes to score against that kind of opponent who has a leaky defense, who's a lesser opponent, even if they're sitting back. That's yeah, that's all I could say about that.
Yeah.
So it's great that we did get that moment of magic, but it's embarrassing. Like you said, Adoni, it's embarrassing to, kind of feel like you're relying on the flop and the penalty against this kind of opponent. Likewise, it's kind of embarrassing to rely on a moment of magic against this kind of opponent, even if sometimes that's what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
And it all comes down to it all comes down. I can't say that because it doesn't all come down to one thing. Of course, that's kind of what we're on about right now. It's not just one thing. It's a whole bunch of things. But you gotta be more creative. You gotta be more creative, and you gotta problem solve when you're faced with this. Because if you can't, that's why you lose leagues too. Because four, five, six teams in the Greek league are going to play like that. And you got to get around it if you want to be a serious title contender. That's, I feel like, what we haven't done differently than our competitors. I don't
yeah.
watch all our competitors' games. I don't watch Olympiacos games, I games, PAO games. I don't watch all of them. I watch some of them. So I can't tell you exactly how Olympiacos is problem solving against Lamia, but I gotta assume that Lamia, Panathinaikos, whatever, Levadiakos, like all these guys, if they are playing closed against us, they're playing closed against someone else too. We're not the only team that's getting the closed in the back treatment. I highly doubt that. And they're problem solving. Hey, sometimes you're not going to be able to do it. That's fine. It's a long season. It's 36 games with the playoffs, so it's a long season. You're gonna get stuck sometimes, but that's the difference between being -8.
Right. Yeah. Very well
And
said.
ironically, our season has now ended at least two seasons in a row, if not three, with a Gela to Lamia.
Yeah.
That's where it ended last season with back-to-back draws against Kifisia and Lamia. It ends this season again with a loss to Lamia. A couple years ago, they were in few 3 years ago, they were in the playoffs, right? That was
Uh,
Lamia. Or was that last season?
we was Kifisia last season, wasn't it?
No. It might have Volos, Lamia. Anyway, whatever. At least two seasons in a row, our season ends with a Gala to Lamia.
Yeah.
And you can't. At that point, what are you going to blame the coach? Last year it was Tarim who had the gala against Lamia. This year it's Rui who has the gala against Lamia.
Yeah.
But all I know, same time of year, basically same match day probably, couple 3 4 games before the end of the season. You play Lamia, you have a gala, and you're basically out. And that's the
Yeah.
difference, like I said, between being -8 or -5 or -3 if you go back a couple more games or whatever.
I'm glad you brought this up because this is kind of where I was gonna head. We've brought up the problems on the pitch, right? We brought up like kind of with this current team, we've brought up the issues with um, the defense, the offensive issues, some of the problems in the middle, some of the problems with our build-up play, et cetera, et cetera. This is like a multifaceted problem with this team, and the basically vocal majority that we see on X from the fan base, of course, is the Alafuzos. Alafuzos, Alafuzos, Alafuzos. That's the easy one to blame, right? He's made mistakes, of course. I'm not going to sit here and say that Alafuzos has not made a mistake the last 15 years as the owner of Panathinaikos. In particular, I think the biggest issue that I'm seeing, or one of the biggest, the culture of this side, because you mentioned, right, that last year and the year before, we blew it. I mean, 2 years ago, we blew an 11-point lead. First time in Greek history that a team had that big of a lead by January and they blew it. Last year, we blew it with Lamia and Kifisia. I mean, terrible results. This year, we've imploded and blown out of the race against Lamia again. A horrible loss, right? To me, the big issue is on this pitch, we don't even have a leader. This team doesn't have a leader on the pitch. We can say that, there might be a vocal leader, Ingus in here and there, but there's not a winning mentality. There's not a vocal winner on this side. To where when we're struggling and the heads have dropped, this player is going to take the game by the horns and he's going to score a goal. Or he's going to take the game and he's going to do something to amp up the rest of the team. We haven't seen that this season. It's like I saw, for example, it sounds like I'm picking on Fote. I'm not meaning to, but yesterday, him getting frustrated, him getting pissed off. Juricic takes a shot and skies it over. He starts getting frustrated. That's good to see the emotion and the passion. I like to see that, but we don't have a guy that's like, okay, time to turn it up. The example I keep using is we look at Slukas with basketball. Panathinaikos basketball team for the last few years before last season was terrible. There's no other way to put it. I mean, we were garbage. We finished second to last place. The team had a losing mentality, a losing culture. Slukas comes in on the basketball court, and his teammates can attest to it. His coach, who's a winning coach, can attest to it as well. Completely shifted the dynamic of the team. Completely shifted it. Things like, I know it sounds funny, but team dinners, right? Organizing team events outside of the basketball court, having organization, being vocal in the locker room. When the going gets tough for the basketball team, he always turns up. He gets those shots, even if he's had a bad game. For the soccer team, realistically, it's been years since Panathinaikos has had some type of player like this. I always talk about it, but Marcus Berg is the last player where even if our side wasn't the best quality wise, we always had a chance in a derby because Berg could score a hat trick. He could score 4 goals. He could score 5 goals, whatever it was. This team right now, as it is composed of individual talents, but we don't have any individual winners on this side. Foti's still learning to be a winner. Tete is still learning to be a winner. He hasn't really been a winner in his career. Pelistri's just come from Manchester United. He's got the talent, all the talent in the world, but he's not a winner yet. Arau has won at some sense with Fenerbahce in Turkey years ago, but he's older. Our midfield players, Cherin hasn't won. Bakasetas, he's been a vocal leader for the Ethniki, but this current dynamic that he's in and out of the 11, we can't really rely on him. Defensively, Ingeson has been trying to be that guy. Mladenovic has been trying to be a vocal guy, but we don't have a winner. I look at this 11, and we don't have a guy that's going to take over the game and a guy that's going to win. The culture's lacking there. On top of all of these issues that we've talked about, the defensive woes, the injuries there, the lack of scoring when we need it isn't there. The midfield being kind of bland, the playmaking. It's just To me, the biggest issue there is a team that has a winning mentality, a winning culture, somebody who refuses to lose. It's not there. You don't put your head down when you go down against Lamia. You don't put your I mean that penalty that Lamia got. I mean, I don't it was just like what is that? Like elementary, we could sit here and argue whether it was a penalty or not. I mean, we threw a second ball on the pitch. Somehow, I don't know the rules exactly, but that's a penalty, I guess. Why did we even have to be in a position to do something like that? We shouldn't have to be there. Olympiacos never has this problem. Ike never has this problem. PAOK's having a terrible season, Alex, and they're just 3 points behind us. And we're supposed to be challenging for the title. It's ridiculous. I mean, I look at it and there's no winner on this team. And for me, going into the summertime, we have the coach for it. We've got some talented players, but you need to go out and maybe you need to get some type of guy that's going to be a game changer. We spent some money on some of these good players, but maybe we need to go and get a proven winner because that's the only way that this mentality in this club is going to change.
Really well said. I can't say it better than what you just said. I think you again raised a lot of good points. I guess what I have to add is, maybe a couple of hot takes, which might not be so hot, who knows? But I agree. I don't think Foti is I think he deserves to be in the captain list, but I don't think he deserves to be our first captain. And the reason I say that is not because I'm trying to bash him, but this team really feels like it needs an older player who, like you're saying, is not only a winner but also has experience. I don't know if this team needs a 25-year-old captain. Um, and it's not can't blame him for his young age. He's just maybe not ready to be that captain for this team or what this team requires, right? Because every team requires different things from their leader. What this team requires might not be what Forti can offer. He might still be a decent captain. He just can't offer the team what it's needing right now. Next year might be a different story. Last year might have been a different story. He might have been a better captain for the team last year, and he's not as good of a captain for the team this year, just because of the needs that are maybe there or not there. So that's my opinion on Foti. Um, again, I think the person who most fits the bill to be captain on this team is Bacacetas. And I think that's a big problem because I don't even think he's that good of a captain, honestly. And I know that's probably a hot take in itself, but yes, I know he is the Ethniki captain. He is kind of what I called for, an older, more experienced player. He is Greek, which is good. Um, he has won in Turkey, and he's lived some decent moments also with the Ethniki. I think he fits a lot of criteria. I don't know if he is a born leader. And the reason I say that is because I noticed a lot of things in his body language and the way he was acting with teammates when things were going bad. And I'm talking about like the Alonso time, and yeah, basically the Alonso time. Which okay, he might have not been the official captain in a lot of those games. I think technically he's still our second captain. So if Foti was on the pitch, he wasn't technically the captain, but the captain is also not just someone who is wearing the armband. It's someone who is also leading when he doesn't have the armband. And I just didn't love, and without, I can't pull anything up right now as hard evidence. I just didn't love how I saw him react to darker times. I don't think he was doing what I'd expect a captain to do when the going is tough. So unfortunately, even though I think he checks a lot of boxes, at the end of the day, I don't think he's the best option either. I think he deserves to be one of the four men on the list, but just like Foti, I don't know if he is the number one guy. He could be second, he could be third. Same thing like Foti. Um, and that's the problem because I do think that he is the most fit, but ultimately, because you're the most fit doesn't mean you're actually the right fit. If the pool of people who you're competing with are worse than you, then you could just be an average option and still be the best of the bunch, unfortunately. And I think that's kind of the situation. Other than that, I think Serge has mentioned Ingesson, who I think is a good shout. I think Ingesson is a good shout. Um, it's kind of really difficult. You know, he's at an unfair advantage because rarely do players get signed and immediately get thrown into the four-man captain list. So maybe next year it's a different story because he's already been with us 1 year, so he could then be included. I don't necessarily agree with that. It's kind of like an unwritten rule. Like you don't. you're new to the team, you don't get thrown in as a captain, even second, third, fourth. I don't know if that's I don't necessarily agree with that. If you're the guy and you can be included, but that is kind of an unwritten rule. So maybe next year he starts, he his what's the word?
Leader.
His captaincy is, potentially on the table at some level, second, third, fourth. But again, Vianney, is one that I look at, academy player, but he's just too young for the same reasons I have to say, this I don't think this team needs a 25-year-old captain. Well, this team definitely doesn't need a 22-year-old captain. And we have seen Vianney take the armband a couple of times this year because of, the other players who are not on the pitch, Foti, Baca, the guys ahead of him. But I love Ioannidis. He will be a captain one day if he stays with us or if he ever comes back to us after leaving. But I don't think it's right now. It's just not what the team needs. Um, so I'm saying a lot of, this is not what the team needs. This is not what the team needs. Well, what does the team need? That's the big question. What does the team need? And I don't think there's one answer. I don't have the answer. I think I could point in kind of the right direction. Like I said, an older player, you mentioned a player who has, tasted winning, stuff like that. These are kind of in the right direction. But does that exist right now in the team? And I think we both agree that the answer is not really.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the Foti thing because it seems to me that the Pae or whoever, I don't know who it is, whatever, that it's kind of like we're trying to make Foti the captain. Like we're trying to mold him to be the guy. Like we're forcing him to be the star, the main guy, the Karagunis of this generation, right? And at 25 years old, I don't know if does Foti even want that yet. Foti still needs to grow a little bit. I mean, this last year was like his breakout season. Um, and he's struggling this season. And it's one of those things where I think like maybe we're just putting too much pressure on him already. The guy just had the breakout season. We should have just kind of kept it as it was, and allow him to try to do whatever it is this season. And I can't recall if we had him as captain last year's first choice captain. Um, it seems like it's a bigger deal this year, and it seems like we kind of threw that on him. That might just be extra pressure. That might be another reason why he's not performing the way that we were kind of expecting him to be performing. Because realistically, to play for Panathinaikos, it's hard. We have harsh fans. I mean, if you're playing good, they love you. If you're playing bad, the fans turn on you quick. I mean that's the unfortunate truth. And at 25 years old, I mean, that's young. And like you mentioned, Vayanidis as well, 22 years old. These guys probably have some traits that could grow into some leadership. But if we look at things just at life in general, most of us, especially if from our early 20s, if we're put into a leadership role, we'd struggle, right? You tend to see these leaders be older in sports, in real life, in the workplace, whatever it is, because they've had time to make mistakes, they've had time to mature, and they've had time to grow. So for a team that's trying to win a Prodathlima for the first time in 15 years, to Alex's point, I don't think you put it on a guy that's 25 years old who's trying to attract the attention of a Manchester United or some Premier League team and trying to be like the club's record signing. You're putting all this extra weight on him, and the guy hasn't won yet. So it's unfair. We need to, like you said, probably find some type of veteran winner, keyword winner, to mentor Foti in this type of situation. If the club wants to run with Foti as the captain, we need to find that type of winner. Because I agree with you as well about Baca. I don't think that's a hot take at all. Baca's the captain of the Ethniki, but he hasn't had a whole lot of winning in his career, and we've seen some types of situations like you mentioned when the going gets tough. Those aren't really traits that would benefit this younger team in a sense. I saw somebody complaining about the age of this Panathinaikos team, but realistically looking at it, some of our main guys are young at this
But
time.
the guys who are putting kind of our money on are young, yeah.
Exactly. So we should try to pair it. I'm not saying for us to pull in Olympiacos and sign like a Marcelo or something like that. Not trying to find a guy that's looking for a vacation, but looking for some type of player who's maybe at the tail end of his prime. He's a winner. He's a good presence. That's what this team needs. We've got some older players, and you know what? Here's a shout, and you mentioned it as well, though, that unwritten rule with newer guys coming in. I'd take a look at a guy like Siopis, who, again, he's not really a winner, but I like what he brings to the team. He brings this sort of like calming presence to the team. And I think that's the type of guy that he'll kind of take a young guy under his wing and let him know, hey, you know what? In these types of games, it's going to get intense. We're going to give it our all. We're going to give it our 100%. And we'll see from here. Maybe a Siopis would be a shout for next year, whenever, but we really need to try to find that winning guy. That's what it.
It
Go ahead.
it has to be a winning guy, like you're saying, and this is a no shit statement. It has to be someone who plays every game. That's why, unfortunately, right now Baca's not even a candidate, I don't think, because he's not in the team every week. Okay, and okay, there's a lot of guys who are not in the team every week, but there's some guys who are in the team every week. Ingerson is in the team every week, you
Yeah.
know? Um, so that's very important, and it's a very obvious statement, but you can't your main captain shouldn't be someone who's being rotated out as often as every other game. He could get a sit, we play 2 games a week, so he could get a sit, but he needs to be able to also play 2 games a week often. He's got to be playing more than 50% of the games. Um, and the other thing I wanted to say, you shouted out Siopis. Unfortunately, Siopis right now is not. I mean, up until now, he has been playing most of the games, but when Arau's fully fit, Arau's probably the main guy. So,
Yeah.
that's a problem for now. Next year is a different story. Arau might not be around. But the other one I wanted to highlight is actually Jedvaj. Jedvaj is a winner, by the way, because Jedvaj was part of the Croatia team that went to the final in 2018,
Oh, that's
the
right.
World Cup final. And he wasn't starting on that team, but he was part of that team. So he knows winning at a high level, at the highest level this sport has to offer. Okay, Croatia lost the most important game, unfortunately, but the road was long until there, and there was a lot of winning for an underdog, right? So I don't know if Jedvaj has the leadership qualities. I would have to look into him more. I don't know off the top of my head. I would say I'm 50-50 on it. I don't want to say no. I don't want to say yes. But he does check some boxes also. Um, he plays every game also when he's healthy. He plays every game. He's a winner. He plays every game. He is on the younger side. He's still only 29, but I don't know. I think he's better than a lot of the guys. He I don't know how I want to phrase this, but I think he's a pretty decent shout. Might not be the best, but again, we don't have the best option right now sitting on our team. We're trying
Right.
to pick out of, what we consensus feel like are a bunch of maybe average options for captain. So again, this is not really a problem for right now. There's not going to be any captaincy changes right now. This kind of gets reevaluated over the summer based on who comes in, who leaves, who stays. But I agree with you, Adoni. Maybe there needs to be more of an overt push to find this guy if he's not already in our team right now, which it seems like he might not be in our team right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Jedvaj is actually a good shout, Alex. I agree because, like we mentioned earlier, with that stat, right? When he's in the team, our defense is the best in the league. I actually didn't even know about him being on that Croatia team as well. So there we go. Like somebody with some pedigree, right? And that's like you mentioned. I mean, to make that run as underdogs, it's incredible. It's incredible. And he's been a guy with guys in the locker room like Luka Modric, right? So he's seen like the world's elite players. And
And
yeah,
he's also played on bigger teams. He's played on Roma. He's been at Leverkusen. He didn't pan out there, but he's played at higher leagues on higher teams. Um, Roma, Leverkusen, Croatia finalist. Again, I'm not. No one is saying he's Sergio Ramos, right? I'm not saying he's him, but he's played at higher levels. He's found success at some levels. And you bring up a good point. He's around one of the best leaders in the game, or has been around one of the best leaders in the game in Modric. So
yeah, it, yeah, that's just yeah. To me, I think that's actually as it is constructed right now, I'd say that's probably the our best shout. Just after kind of observing all that, you know, we're gonna see, man. It's just you would
One more thing I want to, sorry to interrupt. One more thing I want to say about Jedvai. He's faced personal challenges in his career. This was a guy who was a highly touted wonder kid 10 years ago when he was 18, 17, 18. Didn't pan out. Obviously, like I mentioned, got to move to Roma, didn't work out there. Got to move to Leverkusen, didn't work out there. So he's faced adversity on an individual level in his career and reinvented himself from a right back to a center back now and is finding success. I'm not saying we're it's the same. I'm not saying that finding success at Panathinaikos is the same as potentially finding success at Roma or Leverkusen, but all I'm trying to point out is that he's faced personal individual adversity, and has overcome it to a certain extent and is now a very decent 29-year-old in his prime who has reinvented himself. And I think that's important, in kind of what you might be looking for a leader in terms of, you know, blowing up that individual thing that you could do with yourself, blowing it up to your team if you're the captain.
Yeah. Having that character, like I was talking about earlier, where, at 22 to 25, maybe you haven't had those experiences yet and you don't know how to go through the adversity. A guy like Yedvai, you mentioned, right, those personal challenges in his career, kind of shows him that he can build character and he's able to find success throughout failures and throughout challenges. So, yeah, I mean, Yedvai is a good shout. And kind of what I was just going to add to earlier as well with that is like, this is something that we're seeing now, and I'm hoping that the PAE or whoever they're starting to notice as well that we're gonna need this. Because again, I think I agree with what Sturge says. I think the easy thing to do is to just blame Alafusos. Just blame Alafusos in this situation. And um, of course, again, like I said, there's been mistakes. Every owner has those mistakes, but in this current season, I feel like what we really lack is that leader on the pitch. I've noticed Alafusos isn't the one on the pitch, and just like I mentioned for Rui as well, Rui's not the one on the pitch putting his head down. Rui and Alafusos aren't the ones missing sitters. Rui and Alafusos aren't the ones not able to figure out how to score against Vikingur, or copying it against Lamia. Sure, decisions can be made that can lead to that, but ultimately it's on the pitch when you're going through these adverse moments, when you're going through this adversity, that a leader or a winner will step up and make the difference on the pitch. Back to the basketball. Yanakopoulos wasn't out there missing the shots when we were losing to Olympiacos a couple of seasons ago. He wasn't out there getting blown out. It was the players. The quality in certain instances wasn't good, but overall the mentality wasn't there either. And that's what we need. It's easy to point the finger and cry and complain, but we're at where we're at right now, and we can still do some things to change it. Bottom line is, last few seasons we've competed for the title, we've fallen short. We've positioned ourselves by signing some quality players, but we still, in my opinion, need that leader that I'm talking about so that we can kind of get over that hump, to get over that situation. Maybe it'll be Yetvai. Maybe in the summer we'll bring some player, somebody that knows how to win. But the team needs direction right now. I wish we had like a Karagunis on this team, like maybe just somebody that's towards the end of his career, maybe a little bit older, to mentor these younger guys on how to be winners and how to go through these adverse moments. But
A lot of people have pointed out Perez, who's just ostracized, right? Like he kind of fits a lot of the criteria too, that we're bringing up, but he was forced out of the team. There's obviously Zeka. Zeka was never going to get playing time. He was basically brought in for that, you know, kind of half a retire with us kind of thing and
yeah,
half a leadership thing.
yeah, they're yeah, and even then, all respect and love to Zeka. I feel like even then he's not even a winner. Like I don't think he won with I mean I could be wrong. He won when he went to Denmark, but with us with Panathinaikos he won that 2014 cup
That's
and
it.
that was it. Like that's it. It's either you bring in a guy that's like a complete step above, like a Berg, right? He was just so good it changed the dynamic of the team in a sense. Or you bring a guy that's older and has already won and kind of knows what he's ready to mentor these younger players. And I don't know what it is, man. Again, I'm not looking for us to sign like a James or a Marcelo or something like that, but somebody. I mean, and I mentioned this in the summer, and I got backlash for this. And I know he's kind of rumors about him being in Mexico, but Sergio Ramos was a guy where I was like, if we could have brought in like a Sergio Ramos, again, he's not where he needs to be in terms of his playing ability, but a guy that's won at the elite level on every single level. I had mentioned that that would have been so good to have in the locker room. The guy, talk about adversity, right? The guy won three Champions Leagues back to back to back. He's come back and reversed ties in the Champions League. He scored winning goals in the Champions League finals. He's won World Cups with Spain. He's won the Euro with Spain. I mean, the guy has done it all. And I mean, can you imagine bringing him in and having him mentor a Foti, or having him mentor a Vayanidis, or having him even mentor a Yervai as well, and just kind of like, hey guys, this is the next step, right? You guys want to be winners? It's gonna get hard. You're gonna play games where you're gonna be down. You're gonna have times where you're gonna want to put your head down. You're gonna want to give up. But this is what you have to do. You have to lock in and fight. These guys have the quality, but I don't think right now they have the mentality for it. And I'm hoping that
Yeah.
they start to grow that. And that's where a guy like I had mentioned, that Sergio Ramos last summer would have been like great. Again, a pipe dream, but I would have liked it.
Unfortunately, given the state of the sport right now, it is harder to find these guys compared to like 10, 20 years ago, right? Because now there's the Saudi money, there's
Yeah.
more leagues, there's the MLS, like there are just more options, more destinations for these winners, these kind of uh historic winners to go to. And I'm not saying that Greece was ever the primary destination for these guys even 20 years ago, but there was less options 20 years ago. So Greece was just one of a fewer options ultimately. Now it's not like that. There's money, there's more leagues, all this. So Greece is even less so a destination for, kind of the people who would fit the criteria like we're mentioning. And that's just the unfortunate. The reason that's not a complete excuse is that our competitors also have to deal with the same thing. Like the teams that we're competing with that seem to have these leaders, Olympiacos, AEK, PAOK, whoever you want to say does or does not have these leaders, they all are also competing. They face the same challenges that we face, in other words, with, these leaders potentially going to other leagues, more desirable destinations, either for money or otherwise, Saudi, MLS, you name it. But they're still getting by. And, I don't know. I haven't looked that close into them specifically to know, but we spent a lot of time talking about Yedvai. I kind of had the same thing if you think about it. Who's their defender who I think is also their primary captain? It's Vida, who was what on the 2018 Croatia team,
Right.
who was on the 2022 Croatia team that went to the semis.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and he's definitely a captain there. I don't know if he's number one, but he's definitely a captain. I've seen him wear the captain armband. Um, And again, I already said in the pod in this pod, it's not all about wearing the armband. If you're a leader, you also lead without the armband. You don't overstep boundaries, of course, but you're also a leader without the armband. So I'm not saying that Yedvai cannot lead, can only lead if he has the armband. No, he should. If he is a leader, then he should lead without the armband also to whatever extent he can and should. But still having the armband is important. Again, I'm not maybe Yedvay is not it. I'm just saying I'm looking at kind of parallels between us and our competitors, and Vita's a pretty good parallel to Yedvay. And he's the captain of his respective team or a captain. Um,
Yeah.
look at PAOK. Who does PAOK have in their back line? Now, this is just all coming to me now. They have Lovren. Where was Lovren in 2018? Also part of that Croatia team. Seems like kind of everyone's doing the same thing. Lovren's not a captain at PAOK, I don't think, but they're kind of all doing the same thing where, hey, these guys are leaders, they're winners. Lovren, finalist with Liverpool. Did he win it with Liverpool? I think he did win it with Liverpool, the Champions League at 1 year.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the formula, and we're seeing it. You're right. Yeah. And I don't know. It all goes back. It all goes back to like what we were mentioning at the beginning, right? we're going on this great defensive run. Yervai gets hurt, things kind of implode. We start to see kind of the cracks in. Again, I don't want this. This is not meant to be like an attack on the team at all, but you kind of see the weakness in the team's character right now, with all the adversity going on, and it just all circles together. It all circles together, and my hope is just that like the team isn't just gonna keep trying to focus and like push this captaincy on Foti, 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 Foti. Like, yes, it's cool to have the Greek, right? The main focal point, right? The star, and for him to be the captain. But you also need to look at the overall package for the team. What's gonna help and what's gonna help Foti too. And maybe forcing him to be the captain right now is not it. Um, hasn't proven
I
to be.
think I think as a team, and this is kind of, I'm going to say this, and everyone's going to be like, well, this is impossible because this is just not how our team is ran, which is unfortunate. But as a team, as management, you have to decide how you want to build this team. You're building this team around Foti, right? That doesn't mean he has to be the captain. He could still be your focal point, the guy that you want to build around, like our Ronaldo, our whatever. Like you build the team around this guy and you play to his strengths. And the people that you bring in and the people that you play are according to those strengths, if this is who you're building around. But that doesn't mean he has to be the captain. Him being the captain, unfortunately, feels a lot like just, hey, this is our best player. Here's the armband, right? That's
Right.
what it feels like,
Yeah.
which we're not the first or last team to do that. I feel like when growing up, Arsenal was like notorious for doing that because they would be just consistently fourth and they would get their players bought by the bigger clubs and they would give the armband to just their best player because they didn't want their player to get bought by a bigger club who's not finishing fourth every year, that kind of stuff. That's just off of my memory. That's what I remember growing up. Um, but it feels a lot like that. Like, hey, we don't want this guy to go to a bigger club right now. He's our best player. Here's the armband.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly, yeah, you kind of summed up. That's kind of been my thought. He's the best player, let's make him the captain. Like that doesn't always translate well. You're not always, for example, I think I've been a huge Messi fan throughout my time as a football fan, right? There was times where Messi was criticized. He was given the captaincy because he was Messi. He's the best player in the world. He's the best player in Barcelona. But there was times where maybe he wasn't the best leader. Maybe his leadership wasn't honed in yet, but he was just given the captaincy. As he got older, he grew into it, and we saw him at that World Cup when they finally won it. But it was something that was, throughout his teams, maybe, you saw Xavi, right? Xavi was kind of the guy, and Iniesta, he was the kind of the guy. And then once they left, Messi kind of naturally took that over, but he still kind of struggled. That's what it seems like again with Foti. To your point, is he's the best player, he's our guy, so you're just automatically the captain. I think we've got to develop some character a little bit more for him, and then see from there. And again, man, it's just one of those things where that's been my biggest issue, kind of with things. Um, I just kind of wanted to move this on a little bit and just like we've got Fiorentina. We drew them, and essentially that's pretty much all we've got left for the season. We're out of the cup. We're basically done with the league. We're eliminated basically. And now we've got Fiorentina. What's kind of what's the goal now for this season moving forward? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
uh, it. I mean, I'm stuttering. I don't know what to say. It sucks. It kind of went downhill within a month. We were in everything a month ago, and now we're basically out of everything but one thing. What's the goal? The goal is, in my opinion, do whatever you can in Europe. And the reason I think it's so important, I've said this many times, I feel like a broken record, but I feel like it's so important. Rebuild this European DNA, right? Rebuild this European DNA because the years that we were out did so much damage to us. Not only like the tangible damage, which is like, no coefficient, have to rebuild the coefficient, all that. That's more tangible. You see that, you see our coefficient on the screen. Um, the intangible damage is you lose European DNA. The European DNA that we had in the 90s and the early 2000s, which we don't know, me and you firsthand because we were just born or young. But that was the European DNA, being able to beat Ajax in the Champions League semifinal, beating Juventus, beating Inter. These kind of results, beating Barcelona that one game, like all of these famous results are not just because maybe the team was better back then, or we had better personnel, or there wasn't as turmoil, or because of the president. Like it wasn't just because of that. It's this European DNA that has been built over so much time. Back then it was positive. Now it's negative. Now it's negative European DNA. Either no European DNA or negative European DNA, which is why you're seeing us lose to teams like Vikingur, teams like Kabbalah 10 years ago, um, teams like Maccabi, like that is, in my opinion, mostly because of the lack of European DNA that this team has right now, which is a result from what happened in the 2010s. The last big European moment we had was, Roma, probably, right? Beating Roma over two legs, and that was back when we still had that European DNA because that was 2011. So we had that European DNA that was built from the 90s, from the 2000s. So anyway, that was a rant. What I want is just to rebuild that DNA, and it's not going to happen in one season. Like if we make a run to the semifinals this year, I'm not going to say like the DNA is built, we're good. You've done good work to rebuild it, but it's sustained success over a couple of seasons. I'm not saying I have the formula, and this is just kind of all theoretical, but hey, last year we made the group stage of Europa League. Good. Okay. That was our first time back in the group stage of a European competition in over half a decade, 5 years. I think it was actually 6 years. So again, our expectations were kind of high last year based on the fact that we hadn't been in Europe 5, 6 years. We had struggled to get to that point. So now you got to that point. How realistic is it to say, hey, we got to this point that was already hard to get to. Now we're going to do the hypervasi, like the more on top of it. Hey, no, you got to this point. Just build on it. Do something, build on it, take it to next year. And that's what I feel like we didn't do last year, right? I would have liked us just to drop down a conference last year. And that is like, okay, we at least we got out of the group stage. And now we can build on that the following year, which is now this year. Okay, we last year we got out of the group stage. Now let's go kind of almost step by step. Let's go round of 16. Let's go round of 8. Let's go round of 4. Stuff
Yeah.
like that. So all I'm asking this year is, hey, we might not get past Fiorentina. They're a legit opponent, right? They're way more legit than Vikingur, and we barely scraped by Vikingur. So you can't take anything for granted. We have to improve a lot by the time that those legs come around, and there's not a lot of time. It's March 6th, the first leg, which is in a week and a half from today. So we don't have a lot of time. Realistically, we might be going out after it. And this is not me being pessimistic. This is just me being realistic, I think. We struggled against Vikingur, which is not even half the team that Fiorentina is. Fiorentina is trying to get top four in Italy. They are a better Fiorentina than Olympiacos faced last year. So this is a legit opponent. Um, just do something to build on it. If you go out in this round, don't lose both games.
Yeah.
Prove that you could match, even if you ultimately don't get it done over two legs, prove that you can match an opponent of this quality, because an opponent of this quality was who we were matching and beating in the 90s and the 2000s when we had that positive European DNA.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm not saying we have to go through, but do something, even if you don't go through, do something that you could build on next year.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that should be like that initial question, right? The goal moving forward. That's the goal moving forward, I think, as a club as a whole, right? Because the problem with us, and I just think like Greek football in general, is the all or nothing mentality. So if something doesn't work, blow up. Just blow it all up. Blow up the team. You get rid of everybody, start fresh again. We've seen so many rebuilds, we've seen so many blow ups and redoing it and blah blah blah. This team, I think, has a good base. right? We mentioned a lot of these young kind of talents that are in the team, or guys just entering their prime, to where use this season as a building block, like you're saying, right? Maybe, realistically, we're probably not going to beat Fiorentina, right? But use it as a building block. Try, fight, do your best, do what you can. Maybe try to nick a win, maybe try to get a draw in Italy, whatever it is, and use this as a building block for next season. Okay, so all right, look, guys, this is the first time in 15 years that we were playing in March in Europe. Great start, right? Conference, we got our feet wet a little bit. We got actually some pretty tough teams overall, minus Vikingur. Um, Throughout these draws in this competition, we kind of know what to expect for the league. Now we need to kind of hunker down, right? We know that the Lamias and the Kifisias and all these teams, those are just as dangerous as playing in Olympiacos for us at this point. We turn up against these bigger opponents, these rival teams. Time to step it up against the Kifisias and the Lamias. Stop doing that small team mentality where you play down to your opponent's level because you're going to get punished. And we've been punished many times over the last few years. We've got a base. We need to build from these mistakes. And that's, again, it kind of draws back to what we said. We need that leader. And that's the goal moving forward is learn from these mistakes that we made this year. I think as fans, for us as well, to not blow everything out of proportion, um, to support the team. I think the fans should be coming to the games and supporting the team, um, and to just keep hoping. Otherwise, what's the point of being a fan, right? Is there's frustrations, we voice them. There's issues. The only thing we can do is hope that the team sees these issues that we see and rectifies them. Or maybe there's other things that we're blind to that need to be addressed and the team's going to address. But
Absolutely.
that should be the goal moving forward is us as fans supporting the team, looking at, although it's been, pretty tough season, there's still some glimmer of positivity, right? For me, it's been this European quote unquote run for the first time in 15 years. So I can take that with me and just building from this for next year and just hope that it gets better and that we don't just keep redoing and repeating the same mistakes again and again and again. Yeah.
And let me be clear, I think we've done stuff this year already, regardless of what happened in the Fiorentina tie, that we could build off of last in next season. Like I said, last year we failed to get to the knockouts. At least this season we got to the knockouts. So, we got that off our chest. The same way we talk about the league kind of like getting over that hump. That league title that is evasive and has evaded us for 15 years, that's a hump. And getting that first league title after so long is going to kind of open the doors. I'm not saying we're going to be winning the league every year after that first league title, but it's going to feel like there's a weight off our chest, right? And it's gonna kind of make it easier. The path to the next one is gonna be easier than the path to the first one. And this is kind of how I view this. Like last year we tripped up getting to the knockouts in almost inexcusable ways. And was Jova at fault? Were the players at fault? Yes, but it was also at fault the fact that there was this, weight on our chest that like we haven't done this in so long. So it's not such a given as we might think it is. Just getting a draw against Maccabi at home to get the job done is not as much of a given as it looks like on paper because of this weight. So same thing. We at least we got that weight off our chest. We finally made it to the knockouts of a European uh competition after so long. That's a weight off our chest. Great. All I'm saying is that we've already done some good work this season to build on next season, regardless of how the Fiorentina tie goes. But given that it is Fiorentina, I would love to keep building. Everything that you do right now is, I think, only going to benefit you down the road next year and the year after that. So if you could prove to yourself and to the team and to the fans and everybody, everyone involved, that hey, we could match Fiorentina, a team like Fiorentina, who we've played and matched and bested teams like them in the 90s and 2000s. If we could do it again 25 years on, hey, we could probably do it again next year. And that doesn't mean we have to win this tie, but you just match them.
Right. Yeah. I think very, very well put together there, Alex. Building block for me, and for you as well. I think
Yeah.
that was kind of my goal too heading into this podcast is just like I know like Twitter and the fan base and everything has just like been really doom and gloom. And for all things considered, yeah, so things definitely this past month didn't end well for Panathinaikos for the football club, but I don't think the issues are as catastrophic as they're being made to be. And I agree with you. I think we just got to keep building. And this Fiorentina tie, hopefully, we'll see some fight, something positive that we can take with us going into next season. Um, and just continue building. That's what this sport's about. We're gonna face adversity. We've been facing adversity for 15 years. Um, yeah, it's just growing from there, man. I think we kind of beaten a dead horse here with the football club. Did you want to add any last points for FC before we move on, real quick?
I guess all I have to say is that, also the league, the title might be lost. Officially it's not, but obviously we're -8 from the top right now. We were all kind of eyeing -3 come playoffs. That's impossible, basically. Um, Not trying to be pessimistic again, just trying to be as realistic as possible. But even if the title is lost, there's still second to play for. Okay, we're -6 from second, but that second, even if it's still difficult in itself, is a Champions League spot, Champions League qualifying this year. So, I'm not saying we're going to do it. I'm not saying -6 is easy. -6 is better than -8, of course. So inherently, second is more attainable than first. Um, I don't know how attainable it really is. I think it depends on, again, where we're entering given the, match day one of the playoffs, but not everything is lost is kind of what I'm saying. There's still something to play for, and you definitely don't want to fall to fourth. So there's only 3 points separating us and PAO right behind us. So games are important. Getting results is important. I don't know what else to say, honestly. It's just not all lost. It feels like it's all lost, and a lot is lost because obviously that title is the main goal. And like we both said, and everyone is saying, getting that weight off our chest is kind of what everyone's eyeing. But hey, when the main goal kind of leaves you, you look at the the um the sub goals.
Yeah, yeah. Well put, Alex. Definitely, yeah. Half glass full for me, I guess, as hard as it is right now, but still exactly that Champions League spot to play for. Um, and that's what we're waiting for. That's what we're waiting for. It's unfortunate that things happen the way that they happen, but it is what it is, man. Um, just kind of going into quick basketball stuff. There's really not much. Panathinaikos BC didn't play this past week because there was the international break. Greece qualified for the Euro basket, so that was fantastic to see. Um, we of today actually were linked with a new center, Tibor Pleiss. Pleiss played for Ataman at Anadolu Efes. Um, Last I saw, it was maybe an hour or two before we started recording this podcast. It said that the deal is super close. So I'm assuming we add in Tibor Pleiss and just kind of add in that extra reinforcement to the basketball side. Um, he's not gonna change the game dynamically, but he is a 7'3", so he's a 7'3" center. Adds a nice little rim protection there. Plays for the German national team, and looks like right now he's playing in China for Trapani Shark. So 35 years. Oh, I'm sorry. This is actually an Italian team. Trapani's an Italian team. He's 35 years old, so he's not coming in to be, the main starter, but we do need a body there at center. So I'll take him. I'll take Pleiss. He already knows Ataman. They won together back to back in Turkey. So welcome addition for me. But we are going to be playing our EuroLeague games again this week. Our schedule,
Asvel, I think, right?
yeah, we're be playing Asvel on Friday the 28th, and then we'll be back playing in the league against Marusi on Sunday. So pretty good game to come back to in my opinion is playing Asvel. We're playing them away, but definitely need to get that victory. and just start to build some momentum. We won the cup against Olympiacos last time out before the break, so the team's kind of on a high right now. So just looking for that victory there on Friday. And other news, my Kendrick Nunn merch arrived. So I mentioned last time I would wear it on the podcast. Figured might as well put something positive out there after the FC debacle this past week. Um, did you want to add anything to the basketball news at all, Alex?
Nah, like you said, not much going on. Yeah, I don't have anything to add.
Yeah, that's pretty brief. We didn't really have anything for basketball, but next episode, I'm sure the Australians are going to cover our EuroLeague and Marusi game. That's all we've got for you guys today. Thanks for tuning in to PAO Fans International. Please be sure to follow us on X at PAO Fans Int, and as well as on Instagram and Facebook. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. We post the videos for the podcast on there. We also have a TikTok page as well that you guys can follow. So we're on several different platforms. Be sure to share this with your fellow Panathinaikos family throughout the globe. We're trying to grow this page and reach as many Panathinaikos fans as possible. We'll be back in a couple weeks' time. With that said, peace out, everyone. Hope you guys have a great week, and hopefully, we'll have a more positive result to talk about next time. Peace.